Today's book is Gilded by Marissa Meyer. If you have kept up with me, you know we did not end on good terms. I absolutely adored her Lunar Chronicles series, but then I reread them and I was less than impressed. And so I'd had Gilded lined up to be at the end of that series. And then I was just like, no, I'm not putting myself through that. I waited, and I don't remember why I picked it up again. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. But I did. I picked up Gilded. If you know anything about Marissa Meyer, you know that she likes to do fairy tale retellings. Gilded is that of Rumpelstiltskin. And you know I had Once Upon a Time in my head the entire time. But I liked this book. I will say that even though I liked it, I was disappointed when I learned that it's not over. That I have to read the next book. I believe it's called Cursed. And I think I'm wary. Because I was so excited about the Lunar Chronicles series, and then I was so let down. The fact that I like this one, I think I'm just afraid that I'm then gonna read Cursed and be disappointed. In any case, we open up this book with this narration telling us about this young girl who was born because her father had rescued a god and was given a wish. He wanted a child / marry this girl from the village. They did. What they didn't realize, or what he didn't realize, was that this god was a trickster god. So yes, he got what he wanted, but there was a caveat, and that is that Serinda, it's Serinda, that she's just be a liar. Like, she just weren't going to be able to believe a single thing she said. She also had these eyes where they were just black, and then the pupils, or like in some form or fashion, there's like a wagon wheel of like gold spokes that came out from what the pupil would have been. In any case, people don't like Serinda. She's kind of an unreliable narrator in many ways, because she starts us from the beginning telling us like we can't trust her. Although in the end, that's not the case. Like, this is not one of those things where you realize it's all a dream and you've been tricked the whole time. No, she's kind of the village outcast, but the village children love her because she's a great storyteller. And this is something that I picked up on, that I guessed very early on, and I kind of thought it was a little dumb that she didn't figure it out earlier. All of the tales that she's telling are true. She's basically giving us background on all of the gods, and it's not stuff she's made up. I mean, it is, but it's factual, almost. Although it's kind of like almost like she speaks it into being, not necessarily because it was already there and nobody knew it. Serinda is kind of the assistant teacher at the school. She believes that the actual teacher is a witch. This actual teacher does not like Serinda and made her life miserable growing up, but the children love her. We meet, I think there's like 5 of them, these 5 little kids that absolutely adore her, and she absolutely adores. She's coming home, they bombard her, she tells them a story. She finally gets home. Her dad's like, "Where are your gloves?" She's like, "Oh, I gave it to one of the kids." She goes to sleep, and she is woken up by the wild hunt. So now here, I'm like, oh my gosh, we are in Winter Song, which I've done reviews on it and its companion novel, and I still just keep hoping that those books are going to be different than they are. Not bad, but they could have done so much more. I was a little confused here, because in the Winter Song duology, he is Ehrlking here, and it could just be narration. The narrator, who is the narrator for all the Lunar Chronicles, who is absolutely fantastic, she calls him the Ehrlking. And so I was 150 million% thrown, because I was like, who is the Ehrlking? I'm not seeing this. Like, I'm not able to put it together that it is the same figure as from this other series, that is the same figure from like German lore. Yes, he is der Ehrlking. He is this black figure within folklore. He and his hunting party ride every full moon. On this particular full moon, he is chasing these two moss maidens. Serinda rescues them. But in rescuing them, she is caught by the Ehrlking. She lies to him, saying, oh, she was out gathering straw to weave into gold. So here we go. This is the Rumpelstiltskin tale. He kind of buys it. Somebody else in his party is like, you know what? I do think she was touched by a god. Not the god she always believed she was touched by, but a god. The Ehrlking's like, okay, yeah. Good to meet you. See you later. I read a review, which, guys, how many more times can I implore you to write reviews? Like, I need things to spoil for me so I can spoil them for you. The review that I found talked about how this was a great book, but that this one and Cursed have a lot of filler. And that taking the filler out, you could have made them one book. So I had my eye out for it. And there were definitely moments. It wasn't as bad as I'd expected, but for sure. We get a little bit of Serinda kind of going about her daily business, and then it's the full moon again, and the Ehrlking summons her. She gets there, and he's like, you guessed it, spin this straw into gold. At this point is when we meet Gild, and Gild is the resident poltergeist, which automatically I'm thinking Harry Potter. But he's not nearly as annoying as Peeves. He actually can weave straw into gold. We do not know how, we do not know why, we don't really know who he is. Gild isn't even his name, but it's the name that he gives. He does require payment. So Serinda, who is very poor, gives him the locket that one of the Moss Maidens had given her as a thank you for saving them. For both of them, the girl in the locket is mesmerizing, but nobody knows who she is. This is the payment, and it works. The Ehrlking comes the next day, and he's like, oh wow, good job, let's go put you to bed. So she goes to sleep, and then she wakes up, and like this castle. So a little backstory is the Ehrlking, I think his home is Greystone. This castle, I can't even try to remember the name of it because I just can't, and I'm too tired, so I'm not. He makes a comment about, oh, this is not where I live. This is just a castle that the owners don't have any use for. This is foreshadowing. This is the first little breadcrumb that we get that things are not what they seem, that this castle is going to come into play, and that we've got a mystery solved. She wakes up, and this castle in which she has stayed all night is in ruins. Basically, she was taken beyond the veil on the full moon, and it was whatever the Ehrlking wanted it to be. But once the veil lifts or drops or whatever you want to say, it is now in its true form. She's like, let me get out of here. And we have this moment with this otherworldly creature that we have throughout the novel that I don't quite understand. And maybe it's because I was listening to it rather than reading it, but I could not figure out sometimes what was real and what wasn't, what was supposed to be real and what wasn't, why we were experiencing these moments. Why, because she's walking through this castle, is she seeing ghostly figures or experiencing Nachtmaren, which again, if you've seen any of my reviews, you would recognize them from, I'll remember it, I'll link it, or maybe I won't. It's midnight, I'm so tired, it's been a very long day. But I need to do this before I forget every single detail there is. She has a little tussle with this little Nachtmaren. She walks out, she goes into the village, and they're like, what in the heck? Because I guess nobody goes to that castle. Nobody comes from that castle, so they're all afraid of her. But she's like, I am going to start over. Like, nobody here is going to be afraid of me the way they are in my village. I am honestly thinking this is where she's going to stay. Like, there's no way for her to get home. Like, this is going to be her new home, and this is her new setting. Oh, no, it's not. She does make friends with the local, I don't know if she's actually the mayor. In my head, she's the mayor. But, like, the local tavern owner and her daughter. They end up finding her a way back to her own home where she reunites with her dad. This whole section I thought was wholly unnecessary because we're set up with this really great mystery about this castle. And she comes away with a book about the town that is at the foot of this castle. And so I'm fully expecting this entire interim between full moon and full moon dedicated to her learning about this castle. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. What is happening is her dad recognizes the smart dude that he is. Her mom is out of the picture, and we never quite know what happens to her. In some respects, we're supposed to believe she ran away because nobody wants to believe that she is a product of her dad catching a god. But then her dad is like, no, it was a true story, that everything that happened was a true story. And she didn't leave us. She was taken by the wild hunt. Now, Serinda is on this war path of finding her mother and like figuring out if her mother is at this castle, because sometimes the Ehrlking will keep the spirits. There is no resolution to it, which I found wholly unsatisfying. The dad, the smart guy that he is, recognizes that the Ehrlking is gonna come back for her. They make preparations to leave, pretending that they're going somewhere else. Nobody knows that they're leaving. They just know that they're going to be gone for a little bit. They get to this town, they put the beeswax in their ear, only for Serinda to wake up and see that her dad is on his way out. That for some reason, and we do not know why, we do not know how, the beeswax has fallen out of his ears and he is following the summons of the wild hunt. This also draws Serinda out, which was the purpose. The Ehrlking is none too pleased to have had to chase her down. On their way to the castle, her dad disappears. And she's like, what happened to him? And the Ehrlking's like, oh, he fell off his horse. What happened to him? We don't really know. She has to weave straw into gold. Gild comes and their friendship is blossoming. I quite like Gild, but he does demand payment. And she's like, I don't have anything. He's like, well, what about that ring on your finger? So she gives him the ring that the Moss Maiden had given her. He finishes his task. I believe he kisses her, but then he acts like it's something he should not have done. She's super confused. Oh, my hair. The night is over. This time, there's no time to sleep. She's just left to her own devices, and there we go. So she goes back to the town. She's there for quite a bit. When she does make her way home, she is hoping to find her father there, and he's not there. And then we have a whole lot of nothing, only for her to return for the next full moon. And actually, I'm a little confused about this. And I guess it's because it depends on the full moon as to the strength of the Ehrlking. But on the next full moon, he doesn't come after her, which makes me think that it's like a different kind of full moon in which he wouldn't want her assistance. So she comes back to the palace or to this castle with the intent of finding her mother and also meeting up with Gild again and kind of figuring out his story. She's learning that absolutely nobody knows anything about this castle. Nobody knows who lived there. Nobody knows who built it. It's 100% a mystery. I thought this was awesome. I was like, okay, I can handle this. She also learns from the townspeople because she thought it was strange that they were so prosperous. Like when she initially woke up that first time, she thought maybe she slept for 100 years. And I was like, that would be kind of cool. She hadn't, but they're just a more prosperous city because of the Guildgeist, which is the gold ghost. And that is Gild, who he gives them money basically as thanks for all this crap that they put up with. She gets back into the castle. Gild has no idea who she's talking about. He's never seen a ghost that matches her mother's description. There's no resolution there. There's no forward movement there. But she has been telling him stories as he weaves. He was very dissatisfied with the ending of the first story because her stories don't necessarily have happy endings. And her first story is about how the Ehrlking had a wife of sorts, and she'd always wanted a child, but because they're the dark ones, they could not reproduce because you need life and love in order to reproduce. One day, she had just found a child wandering in the woods. She brings this child home. She loves this child. She teaches this child things until she realizes the child is growing up. So the Ehrlking disposes of the child. This is why children tend to disappear, is because they're taken by the Ehrlking. Serinda tells him this story about how the Ehrlking had heard about this beautiful princess and how he was going to go get her for his wife, because something about the connection of this child being able to turn things to gold. He steals this child for his wife, only for the little girl's brother, the prince, to wake up and come after them. He's unable to get there in time, but what he does do is he kills the wife. I think her name is Petra or something. In retaliation, the Ehrlking kills, in sorts, the princess in front of the prince, and then he pierces him with an arrow that will forever tie him to this castle, and he kills his entire family. I mean, I put these pieces together as well. It's like, I know Gild is the prince. Like, I just know he's part of the story. This is not something that we learn when she sneaks into the castle to, like, hang out with Gild, but we do see their relationship blossoming. The next time that she is summoned to the castle, she stays close by and she's like, look, what's up? I'm here. Like, no need to go and get me. Gild, she has nothing left to give him. So what she does is she promises him her firstborn. He weaves all the straw. They do the thing. The next day, I think it's this time, she accidentally pockets, or unintentionally pockets, a spool of gold thread. And now she is out and about, and she is, I don't understand what happens, but she's in that town. She is lured off by a water sprite of some sort. She encounters this other kind of creature on a bridge that tries to kill her, but then she's rescued by the Moss Maidens, who take her to their grandmother, who's like the queen of the Moss Maidens. This woman is like hinting the fact that Serinda is pregnant, and she's telling Serinda nobody can hide from the Ehrlking, and Serinda's like, oh, well, you guys have hidden from it, and she's like, no, we are not jeopardizing our safety to harbor you, but we might be able to come up with a plan. So they do, and that is they create a potion that will separate her from her body, and this is when we learn that that teacher from her hometown is actually a witch. Because obviously it was in her story, so it's true. She pretends to have died, and then the Ehrlking comes to get her. He finds her body. This angers him so much because he figured it out. Like, he's not dumb. He's so angered over the fact that he cannot have her, that he kidnaps her little gang of school kids. He kills, if there's 5, he kills 4 of them. And this is like hugely tragic. But before this, did I mention that she comes home and she finds her dad, but he's like the living dead, and then he tries to eat her? I personally, when she came home and heard all the chewing noises, thought that he was chewing on her ex-boyfriend. No. He was like, I think, chewing on his own arm. The witch is able to kill him, and this is when she reveals herself to be in league with the Moss Maidens and all that stuff, and she gives Serinda the potion. The next day, she learns that all these kids have disappeared, and she rides off to this castle to try to find them because she knows exactly who took them. And she finds their poor little bodies on the road with their hearts pulled out. Okay, lost her dad, lost the only people who care about her. Like, what is going on here? It was a little much. She gets to the castle, and then she realizes she can't cross the veil because she's living and it's not a full moon. And then she realizes, my stories are true. Maybe I can create a way to get through the veil. So she tells the story about how there's a rip in the veil. She's able to cross over. She meets up with the Ehrlking, and he's like, you do such great work. And what she's trying to bargain for the life of this final child, as well as the release of the spirits of the other children, because they're now in the Ehrlking's court. So he's like, all right, well, what I want you to do is weave more straw into gold. But you also have to do it in public. And she's like, I don't think so. Gild is like tied up because he's accused of stealing that spool of gold thread. And we still don't know why the king wants all of this gold, except that it's extremely strong and kind of has like supernatural power. So he can use it to his own advantage, but it will harm others with whatever he intends. The end result is that he wants to bring Petra back from the dead, if you can call, if these guys actually die, whatever they do. She gets out of spinning by telling him, oh, well, I'm pregnant, so I no longer have the power. The power is in my child. The Earl King's like, well, I'm just gonna carve that kid right out of you. And she's like, oh, no, it doesn't work that way. The story ends with him arranging for them to get married so that it looks like this child is his, and then he can just use both of them to his advantage. She is also, like she had before with the potion, separated from her body. So I guess she can stay there full time. I don't really know. I kind of zoned out a little, but she's alive but dead because this fetus needs to continue to grow, so she can't, like, her physical body cannot die, but her spirit is separated from it. She gets together with Gild, and she doesn't tell him the entire truth. Like, she doesn't tell him what she knows about him and his past. I don't believe she tells him about the baby, but they kind of, please excuse me, I might be completely making this up, but they do kind of come to terms with what she's done and why she's done it and their feelings for each other. So that is Gilded. It's probably one of the worst reviews I've ever given because I'm exhausted and it's been 2 weeks and I did no prep work whatsoever because I couldn't even remember what book it was that I'd forgotten to do. It was a good book. I do think it needed some more development, but it was one that I would recommend, and I would love to hear what you think. In the meantime, like, subscribe, and comment. Oh, bye.